And I think, yeah, I think it's recording now. Okay. Oh, Mr. John Seetoo is here. All right. Hello, Mr. Seetoo.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good.
Oh, let me put my camera on. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you so much. Just FYI, we're recording this, so just to let everybody know for
Okay,
if that's okay with you.
that's good.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Again, I apologize. I was on at a last minute call with a couple partners of mine.
That's fine. That's fine. No biggie. We
No.
understand you're busy.
Yeah. So how you doing, Paul?
Good. Doing all right. Doing all
All right.
right.
Oh, should I shut my camera off or should I leave it on?
Oh, leave it. You can leave it on. You can leave it on. Up to you. Up to you.
Okay.
Up to you how you want to do it. I tried putting my camera on, but my computer wasn't handling it.
Ah,
I have
okay.
yeah. So since I'm hosting this, I'm it'd be a lot easier if
All right,
I
Francisco.
turn it off. And, yeah, have the resources to do it. So
Great. All right. Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm glad I could be here today. So, is everybody familiar with my background from the company webpage, or should I go into that, or Paul?
I did. I shared it. I shared it um with everybody. Let me see here. I can share the screen if people would like.
Okay.
Hold
Well,
on.
just like I didn't know whether I should actually go into the whole history part of it, or if everybody's familiar with the history part of it, then I can just go into some of the specifics of how I got from where I started to where I am in a condensed form, and then I can take questions.
I think that would be great. Like, yeah, just
Okay.
to go.
All right. Well, I never envisioned that I would be doing this kind of business. When I was in college, my major was actually film production. And I was working in New York. I was doing grip work and doing assistant work on independent features, music videos, which were big at the time, because that's when MTV still played videos, and documentaries and industrials. And one of my classmates had a brother who had a marketing company in France. So we got the idea of grafting an entertainment division onto the tour promotion department of that company. And we figured out a way that if we could arbitrage the money that we would get for doing the tour to have enough to pay for making a feature film, then we might be able to actually do both concurrently. So we found a bunch of resorts. We looked all over the country, and we found the Point Resorts in Phoenix, which at the time, well, right now I think they're owned by Hyatt, but at the time they were run by a gentleman by the name of Bob Gosnell, who was an entrepreneur, very smart guy. When he got out of his service in the Vietnam War, he wanted to be a developer. Nobody would give him the time of day. So he went to the public archives and did the research on who owned large tracts of land in the Phoenix area, but who lived in Florida or somewhere really distant that would never check on it. And he would park his trucks on their property with the name Gosnell displayed very big, and he would put stakes up so people would think that he was developing those plots of land. And at the time, it was a smaller community, so word got around and people started giving him work, and he built his, quote, empire, unquote, off of that. So we found that the Point of Tapatio Cliffs, which was one of the 3 resorts, had a 5-star, 5-diamond rating, and they were considered at the time to have one of the top 3 best French restaurants in the city of Phoenix. So since all of our executives in France and Belgium were all food snobs and they looked down upon French cuisine done by Americans anyway, we figured, why hedge our bets and just try to go with the best rated, at least for American standards. So we made a deal that we were going to bring roughly 200 people into the Point Resorts for 2 weeks. So we were saying, well, I'll give you a 20% discount off the rooms. They said, no, we're gonna bring 200 people. And I did a little research and I found out that in August it's almost deserted because of the weather. So I came up with, well, hey Bob, if we bring all 200 of them in the middle of August for 2 weeks, we have them eat at your restaurant, we have them rent at your budget rental car, we'll have them all do their entertainment tied to your resort, then what kind of deal will you give us? So he said, oh, well, it's deserted here. Nobody else wants to be here. It's 130 degrees. Yeah, I'll give you guys 80% off. We said, deal. So we arbitraged the difference because we charged all of the French and Belgian executives full boat, and we had enough to make a movie. So we shot the movie concurrently, and we actually got the French people to get excited about it because one of the stars of the movie was a popular singer. So we actually got them to pay to be in the movie because we had one scene that was reminiscent of Alfred Hitchcock's 39 Steps. And it was a big ballroom and everybody was going to be dressed in tuxedos and evening gowns anyway. So we said, Didier Hubert, who is the star, is going to come up and he's going to look like he's going to give a speech and you're going to hear a gunshot. And we would like the lady in the green dress in front to jump up and scream. And then we want everybody to run for the exits. And they did it, and we did it all in one take, and it was great. And the movie actually got shown at Cannes. The sales of it was another story because this was in the late 80s. Cocaine was still very popular at the time, and as a problem with our sales agent. I won't go into detail, but essentially a larger French consortium saw the margins that we had on just the tour division alone, forget about the rest of the marketing company, and they made a bid to buy the whole marketing company on the basis that anyone who wasn't French, meaning me, got kicked out. So at the time I was about to get married, I needed to get a quote, real job, unquote. And a friend of mine who said, well, if you can come up with ideas on how to raise money for a French movie nobody here wants to see, why don't you work with us? We're an investment bank on Wall Street. So I took the test for Series 7, got licensed as a broker, got started with them. And through colleagues, I wound up apprenticing as a municipal and corporate bond trader with a very tenured, grizzled veteran of the field. And I eventually, when he retired, I took over his position and I was director of corporate and municipal bond trading for Baird Patrick and Company for 7 years. They were an old white shoe firm. They've since folded. I think they still have one office out in New Jersey, but it's the firm at one time was like the 12th largest in the convertible bond area. And anyway, I left Wall Street in 2006 when Client 9, better known as Eliot Spitzer, was running for governor, and he introduced a protocol called Trace, which was his justification because he said, if Rudy Giuliani is an Italian American and is going to go after the mob, I'm going to go after all of these rich bond traders that are ripping off little old ladies. So I'm going to introduce transparency into the system. And of course, when he introduced Trace, you can only see it on a Bloomberg terminal, which costs at that time a minimum of $2,500 a month. So of course, every little old lady had one of those in their living rooms. But it basically crushed trading for smaller and mid-sized firms. And as a result, as you see now, most of bond trading is consolidated among the big banks and institutions. So I left then and have been doing private consulting for public and private companies in terms of both project finance and corporate finance. I write business plans for them. I help them with their investor relations and a range of other services. And that's kind of what I do right now. So with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, Mr. Seetoo, this is on regards to like current events right now. They came out with the inflation report, and it came out high.
Yep.
It was nosediving, but now we got a opposite surge here on the line and you think it's more of a kind of like a bubble or so, not a bubble, but maybe just a hype? Or
You mean inflation?
well, no, the way it was nosediving, then they came back up. The stocks, the indexes came back up. The stocks, the security.
Are you talking about the Dow? What do
I
you
think I think
what
overall.
what are you speaking of specifically, please?
Okay, so I guess right now the inflation report came out, right?
Right.
It was higher,
Right.
and so everything like the indexes on every sector, they were going down,
Right.
but then suddenly it just straight shot. It gave a straight shot up.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you think on that situation?
Institutional manipulation.
Okay, yes, that's what it is.
They're trying to force people to think, oh, okay, that was just a momentary reaction. Everything's still good. It's okay to buy. Meanwhile, they're selling to all those people.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
It's very cynical, but I mean, it's happened hundreds of times throughout history. Just like the price of gold the price of silver especially has been artificially suppressed, because when one thinks about it, every smartphone, every flat screen TV, your Duracell batteries, they all use silver. Silver is a depleting asset, commodity. It's not something that people just hoard or maybe make into jewelry or coins. I mean, people actually use it for electrical purposes, for designing products and selling them, and not in small quantities. And when people trash their cell phones and their flat screen TVs, that silver doesn't get recovered. Or if it does, it's very, very minimal trace amounts. So the fact that silver has been suppressed, to me, I think it's artificial. I think people have been buying it. I think institutionals and governments have been buying it covertly, while the price is keeping the price low so that they can hoard. Because I think it will shoot up.
That's a really interesting insight. Yeah, I'll have to
Well,
look
I
into
mean,
that.
people don't use gold that much except for coins, or possibly, Zimbabwe, I think, put out a coin recently.
Hmm.
But, well, they have a lot of gold. But for the most part, gold just gets stored as like a hedge or something in physical form. Very little of it actually gets used
Right.
relative to silver. Silver people are manufacturing with every day.
Because the hot item right now is lithium.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone
That's
wants
because of
to
the
use it for
batteries and all the
batteries.
push for the electric vehicles and stuff. Yeah.
Mhm. So you think it's kind of like is that what's called a dead cat bounce? Like the market just kind of
Well,
bouncing
dead
up
cat
low.
bounce. Yeah, it's kind of a dead cat bounce, but in this case, my impression is that it's a little bit more manipulated. by larger institutions and also probably the U.S. government behind it.
Gotcha. So you think in the long term, it's still your outlook is still a little negative, or?
Oh, I think the whole market's going to collapse. I mean, I may have some extreme views, but I mean, you can see the handwriting on the wall, I think, on with the euro collapsing and where things are, even though the dollar trading against other currencies looks strong, there is no petrodollar anymore when you think about it, because now that Russia is selling gas only in rubles or in yuan in their special agreement with China. And you have a lot of other countries now that have joined BRICS or are working with BRICS away from the US dollar. All those extra dollars that had to be hoarded by other countries in the past in order to facilitate large-scale commodity trades, that's all coming back here. So I think unless there is a currency revaluation, we're going to see like another Weimar Republic kind of situation with the US dollar. That's my opinion.
So not just regular inflation, but hyperinflation.
Oh yeah.
That's what you're getting.
Oh yeah.
You're getting at.
No, I think the numbers right now are conservative because all the numbers that the CP, that the Consumer Price Index and all these other statistics report are all trailing. You got to remember, they're not current.
Right,
They're not. I
right.
mean, they're current as far as when they report, but when they did the calculation, they're trailing because they took that data from weeks ago.
So trailing by how many months would you say?
I think it's trading at least like 2 or 3 weeks, if not more.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Mr. Seetoo, and you mentioned silver, but
Yeah.
you see,
Who am I speaking to?
Francisco Ortiz.
Oh, Francisco. Hi.
Yes, I'm sorry, but I was listening to your comments on silver. I see a lot of people try to like invest in silver by buying up coins, but is that the usable silver that you mentioned, or is it just
It's all the same.
all the same?
What do you buy? Coins, bars, jewelry. I mean, as long as it's all goes by purity level, though, of course.
Right.
But as long as it's 99.9% holds, it's going to hold the same value and it will increase in value. That's my opinion. I personally am along silver, physical silver. Yeah.
Now,
yeah, buying the ETF is a whole different story. There's a lot of risks involved with that because there's already some dangers of potential default on delivery with the ETFs.
Oh wow, yeah, I was about to ask you a question on that, like which one would you prefer, as a physical silver or paper
physical
silver?
only. I would not do any ETF or any kind of derivative at this point, because they may all default. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the one of the resources that I've follow a lot. I think I've referenced this to Paul before. Is Zero Hedge. If you ever get a chance to read Zero Hedge, they have some pretty I think unvarnished analysis. And I think it was one article I saw where the central banks are looking at several quadrillion in derivatives defaults.
I think back in the day, when gold was popular, because I read Zero Hedge and also the Kaiser Report.
Oh, well, there you go.
It's great stuff, But I remember there was this fear of they called it gold backwardation, and it was the whole paper gold versus like physical gold thing. And I was wondering if you're familiar with that, or if you could like go into that a little bit. What exactly is backwardation?
To be quite honest, I don't really know that aspect of it well enough to articulate it in a discussion.
I think it's if I remember correctly, it was something like what you mentioned with the issues with delivery.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of that, but gold's a little bit different situation because the derivatives market that got set up for it now got changed when was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago? China, no, actually it was 2 years ago. China opened a physical exchange of gold in China. Exchange. There was an exchange market. It was a Shanghai, I
Heard
think.
about that. Yeah. I heard
Yeah.
about that.
So it's a physical exchange. So that changed the whole, because the LME is all paper, pretty much.
Gotcha. LME. What is what is that?
London Metals Exchange.
Oh, is that American? Like American?
No, London.
London. Oh,
London.
gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha. Oh, wow, interesting. So, wow, so the one in China is actually physical. Like they have.
Correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
How does? Oh wow. How does that work?
Well, that's why that upset the apple cart tremendously.
Wow, interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I think I have some gold or I kind of looked into getting like some gold bars because every country has like their own unique imprint or like their own
Mhm.
type of coins. I don't know if it's like Krugerrands and then American Eagles and I think Canadian Maple Leafs, that sort of thing. I think Chinese Dragons is a big is what they have here in China,
Mhm.
in Asia. Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. I didn't add it to that. How about silver? Is China big on silver too, or is that?
Historically, actually, China was bigger on silver than gold, and then that all changed when China got opened up post Opium War.
Right, right.
But yeah, prior to then, historically, China always valued silver more than gold, actually.
Wow,
But now
that's
it's a global economy. They match it. But I think actually BRICS is asset backed, and they're tying it specifically to oil and precious metals and such. So, all of the BRICS nations and any other nations affiliated with them who or who want to be affiliated with them, I believe Iran made application to join, and Saudi Arabia has been threatening, which is why I said that the petrodollar is dead. And I think recently, was it yesterday, the Saudi Arabia basically told Biden, we're not playing the quid pro Joe game. And they rejected Biden's proposal. And I think Germany is looking at possibly wanting to apply for BRICS just because they're in a situation now where it's going to be either go for eat or go for heat, because they're looking at getting a very cold winter without natural gas from Russia.
yeah, they're in a
They still
very
want to be
tough
able to feed their
spot.
population. So, if they can join, if they can join BRICS, then the euro is going to be dead. All the European nations going to go back to the individual currencies, I think.
Oh wow. So the decline. Oh wow, that's a bold
Well, I think
prediction.
people are feeling it already. That's why the euro dropped from 140 to like 90 something cents.
That's true. That's true. Like yeah, it was we had parity recently. That's what I read in the news.
It got as low as like 92 cents at one point.
Oh wow. Where's it at now? Like around
I haven't followed it this morning.
right. Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, everybody was talking about taking vacations to Europe.
Mhm.
around that time. Yeah. Yeah. So the decline of the euro, what do you think are like the broader implications for like the American way of life, like with the decline of the petrodollar?
Oh, well, we're
What do
going
you
to
think?
see, unless we do a revaluation to do parity with BRICS on having asset-backed currency, we're going to be in a real, we're going to, what's going to hit the fan. I think there was wasn't there a proposal in Congress yesterday or the day before that restoring the gold standard or fixing the dollar price to a specific gold price. I
Do
think
you
that was.
think we're? Do you think that's actually like there's a really strong possibility of that happening?
Oh, I think they have to. I mean,
Oh wow.
the Federal Reserve basically has been running the printing presses nonstop, and it's exactly the same what happened with the Weimar Republic.
But then everybody else is right. Like that's
Well,
where.
all those countries that had previously pegged their currencies to the dollar are now like seeing the effects of seeing a commensurate effect of inflation. So, I mean, I'm not an economics expert. I'm just kind of relaying my opinions here based on my experiences as a bond trader. So, take you also just take that for what it's worth. So I'm not a Ray Dalio or anybody like that. So, but I think that the signs are there. It just depends on how people want to interpret them.
Gotcha. Are there any bright spots in the market that you're optimistic about, or that you think have potential for growth?
Well, I think that XRP, Ripple, cryptocurrency is one of the only cryptocurrencies that's going to be tied to gold. And that's probably because there looks like the SEC thing is going to be done. And then that will probably appreciate because if it's going to be tied to gold, and if Congress does push through the return of the gold standard, then that could be a pretty nice play.
That's interesting. I've actually tried looking into XRP. It's difficult.
Yeah,
acquiring
yeah.
it.
Well,
Yeah.
especially with the SEC litigation right now.
Right. Yeah, because
But
they were
I
they were
think
arguing.
they're going to win at the end, because if they're tied to gold, I mean, all these other cryptocurrencies that had like stable coins that weren't exactly too stable, if they're not backed by anything, I think they're all going to go belly up. But anything that's tied to something tangible, I think like XRP will, if I'm not mistaken, was it Stellar Lumens? I think it's tied to silver. So that's probably going to be all right.
But I feel like that also has the same like difficulties as what's it called? It's like paper gold and paper silver, like with the link there is what's
Well, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
obviously people have to do their due diligence and
right.
get a comfort level for just how strong the backing is with the tangible asset.
Yeah, that's always the difficult part. So
Right. But
yeah.
if it proves out that it's a solid connection there, then that will probably be a much better bet than your normal derivatives.
I think I'd like to see a future where, like John Wick, like the John Wick coins. That would be that would be crazy. That would be interesting.
Well, Zimbabwe issued a gold coin like 2 months ago? It's during the summer.
Really?
Yeah.
I actually I did when it was like a very popular thing. I'm a little bit of a gold bug, so I kind of looked into the history, like of when these precious metals were actually used as a currency, like gold and silver and whatnot, during the like the Roman era.
Mm-hmm.
And well, what I found out, or what was interesting, was that it wasn't gold wasn't like used like as a common form of exchange by common people, like most people didn't use it. It was mostly by the upper class and the elites, and
Mm-hmm.
they would use it to trade like major things like houses, and or yeah, just like very expensive or very um um yeah, just very expensive things that that wouldn't be practical for like other smaller metals. But the common people, from my understanding, used like less they would use less expensive metals or less valuable metals like
Mhm.
silver, bronze, like that sort of thing for trade. That was my understanding, at least.
Yeah, no, you're accurate.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a very interesting future or something like that. Hmm. Wow.
Actually, I have a question.
Sure.
Hello, Professor Seetoo. My name's Edward Gonzalez. I'm a major I'm majoring in international business, and I was wondering, like, because I was reading the info that was on the MBA Association website about your work and stuff. How did you
Mhm.
get involved in international business, being like import export commodities, or how you're now consulting for a container security company? I was just like wondering, how did you start, and like your journey to like where you are now? I think it'd be interesting to hear.
Okay. Well, my consulting was a derivative off of the client base I had developed as a bond trader, and the relationships that I had developed on both the personal level and institutional level, and the goodwill and I guess favorable reputation that I had developed over the years led to my own network of being introduced to people in those different fields. Uh, so, for example, the the maritime security the container thing, that was a result of a relationship with a friend, a very close friend of mine who's now a partner, who was formerly a what was he? He was he designed synthetic securities for actually, I shouldn't say the name. It was okay. It was a company that that was in the towers that got that, that 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 they lost a lot of people on 9/11, and he was luckily not one of them. But he introduced me to people that were involved with the maritime security company, and that company has a device that we believe will address the container security initiative, which was enacted like in 2002, but so far there's nothing that has been developed to be fully compliant.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, it's very interesting. Because I do want to get into like import export stuff. I think it's very interesting, and just strategizing and problem solving. I think that'll be like amazing to do. Um, but more like on the import export, like like I want to hear on that. Like I don't know if you can elaborate on that, or if you did.
Import export.
Yeah.
Well, in my case, I was able to learn a lot about shipping logistics and maritime shipping logistics from a colleague who was involved in it as a freight forwarder. And based upon that and my knowledge of finance for importing and exporting goods, like primarily, I was consulting to companies that would outsource an OEM their manufacturing for their products in China. I had one client, for example, that made microphones. Well, they designed the microphones here, but the labor cost was and the parts costs were too high, so they would outsource the manufacturing in factories in China, which a lot of other companies do. And I was involved with helping them do the factoring for it when needed, or getting them revolving letters of credit in order to facilitate being able to pay the factories on time and have the goods ready to be shipped to Europe or to ship to to North America.
Got you. That's very interesting. I'm actually taking a international finance class, and yeah, that's very interesting. It's very broad, but it's very
Oh
cool.
yeah, it's very broad, and it's every country has its own particular quirks.
Yeah.
There's certain protocols and legislations and regulations that one needs to be familiar with on a individual basis. It's not like a cookie cutter thing at all. And regulations will change all the time. As you saw, with the tariff wars with China, I mean, all these things would change. And I mean, I'll just give you, you could tell in the background, I'm also a musician, and regulations with regards to certain woods all of a sudden becoming outlawed for no reason for import or export can cause major problems. Like the U.S. for some reason outlawed the importation of Madagascar rosewood and mahogany, and as a result, companies that were even buying small quantities wound up having them seized by customs. So they had to source replacement immediately, otherwise they were going to be late on their deliveries to their buyers.
Gotcha. Yeah, customs brokers are very important in this field. I'm actually studying to take my exam, actually, so hopefully I pass that. That'll be cool.
Well,
but it's a lot of regulations. Thank you.
Seems a bit arbitrary, no? Like the way they
Oh, it's a lot of it has to do with internal politics. Okay, I mean, in the case of the Madagascar hardwoods, it was politics here in the U.S.
right.
that triggered it. It wasn't, I mean, the country that was exporting it, they say, hey, we want to sell this stuff. We got tons of it. But someone in the U.S., I guess, was advocating that it be declared like a illegally harvested wood because it was like hurting the habitat of some bird or something like that.
Gotcha. Probably it was like their competitor, maybe someone from the Pacific.
I don't think it was a competitor. I think it was actually a animal rights advocacy group here in the United States.
So environmental.
Yeah, environmental issue.
Oh, how do you think because before we used to have NAFTA, right? And now it's USMCA. Now how has that affected our international trade relations with the EU?
I don't think it's really changed things much. I mean, from a trade perspective, I don't think it's really made changes at all. If anything, though, it's made Mexico, well, the enforcement is not as bad. It's really bad now, but back then, tied to the enforcement of that trade agreement was for Mexico to better police its borders and keep their drug cartels in check, which they were doing, but that has since gone away since 2020.
What has gone away?
Oh, that level of enforcement.
Oh, I see.
Because
So
there was the insurance costs have risen as a result of the lack of enforcement.
Oh wow. So do you see So there's this whole argument between like global trade, globalization, and
Can you speak up a little
nationalism.
louder,
Oh,
please?
sorry. So there's this whole argument between globalization and like nationalism, right? And so what do you see as like the future of global trade? Do you think it will increase like in the future, or kind of like decrease a little bit? Global trade.
I see a split where there's countries that will want to deal more with China, and other countries want to deal more with the US. And actually, I think there's going to be an opportunity in Southeast Asia to be the middleman, similar to when Hong Kong was the conduit to do business with China before before companies were able to do business directly. Deng Xiaoping has opened that up in China, but prior to that, one had to go through Hong Kong in order to do business in China. And I think it's going to go back to that, only I think the new conduit will be out of Southeast Asia. It would be like Thailand or Malaysia. Vietnam actually, I think, is developing its own homegrown business because they got a lot of manufacturing work as a result of the tariffs against China, and apparently, especially in terms of like making like sneakers. I mean, Nike makes a lot of sneakers now in Vietnam, but also in terms of electronics and like component assembly and PCB wiring. Vietnam stepped up their game, and their GDP, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was pretty high. It was like almost 13% gain, something like that.
Oh wow. Yeah. So who do you think is in Southeast Asia is well
Can
positioned
you
to be
speak up,
that?
please?
Sorry, I'm sorry. Who do you think in Southeast Asia is well positioned to be that conduit? Like, you think it's Singapore or Bangkok, or
Uh,
which city do you
I
think?
think it's, to be quite honest, I think it's the Chinese diaspora it's in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand. Singapore is kind of its own thing. They have high tech. They have Seagate's out of Singapore, for example. They have their own thing going. There'll be some business through Singapore, but Singapore's I don't see it as much. I don't see the incentive as much because standard of living in Singapore is pretty high, and it's not a huge population. It's much more competitive in the quote tiger nations, unquote.
Right, right. So you think the next Hong Kong is going to be Kuala Lumpur, or?
I don't think it's going to be one. I think it's going to be. I think people are going to have to develop their own connections in KL, in Bangkok, and in Jakarta, and it'll be for different things. I mean, I think there'll be certain specialties where like people will go through Malaysia for certain kinds of manufacturing on maybe textiles or something like that. Indonesia may be similar, maybe also for commodities, and Thailand would be maybe for electronics and stuff like that, because they have some electronics manufacturing as well. If people want to go through them to get to do business in China.
Yeah, yeah. Because like Southeast Asia is very different from China in the sense
Oh
that
yeah,
it's very fragmented, right?
very fragmented.
Right. Like China, like you just had to go through Hong Kong
Mhm.
and you had access to all of China, but in
Yeah.
Southeast Asia, there's not one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, Philippines has an interesting situation because they have strong ties to the US, so they may actually be, in some ways, a conduit the opposite way for people in China who want to do business with the US but can't do it directly.
Right. I don't know, I think my mom or my parents were talking recently about a free trade agreement. There were talks of a free trade agreement between the Philippines and America.
Mhm.
So I don't know where that's going.
Yeah, I mean,
but,
Philippines is still has close ties to the U.S. because of the military relationship
yeah.
and all, but I could see, because there's a sizable Chinese minority in Manila, and so I could see them acting on behalf of Chinese companies that want to do business in the States, that where the Chinese companies can't do it directly because of the growing animosity and if more political barriers get erected.
True. I think economically, Philippines does more like has a lot more trade with like its neighboring countries like China and Japan and
Well, yeah,
Korea.
because they do both.
Yeah.
They're in a unique kind of position, but
Mm.
I don't think that those other nations that I mentioned, like Indonesia and Thailand and Malaysia, have the same relationship with the states that Philippines does.
Yeah, no, they don't. They don't.
So that's why I
Historically,
could see
no.
U.S. companies seeking them out to do business in China, whereas I could see Chinese companies seeking out people that they know in Manila to be able to do stuff in the States.
Interesting. So I mean, I guess I was gonna say that maybe is Manila gonna be the next Hong Kong, or is Manila gonna be the next Singapore, right? Because Singapore used to be that conduit for
A little
certain
bit,
things in
yeah.
East
I mean,
Asia.
it's hard to say. It's hard to say. It depends on the politics within the Philippines as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot less stable. Like there's
Yes.
less stability. Yeah, and Singapore has that. It's like it has stability, but it's also
Mhm.
there's a premium, a
This is
very high
true.
premium for that. So yeah, I talked with my Singaporean colleagues, and I was like, I'm trying to convince them to come out and
Yeah.
to the Philippines.
Well, I mean, Singapore is like tiny, but they have an air force.
They do. They're quite
Yeah.
powerful.
And there's nothing to sneeze at either.
Yeah. I read a lot into their whole defense strategy. It's very interesting, very
Mhm.
fascinating the way they do that. Hmm.
May I ask a question? It's this again.
Sure.
Switching it over a little bit towards Germany again. You know how they in the energy sector with the pipeline. I mean, now that everything's happened with Ukraine and Russia, and now the energy cost has gone up, would you think that maybe the private businesses or the ExxonMobils or the people that were part of establishing that pipeline and supplying the country with energy, are they a bit of a cause for what's going on as far as the lack of energy now that they're facing? Because part of them establishing operations there from Russia or getting supply from Russia would have been looking into the stability of the Russian government and maybe kind of foreseeing something like this happening. But they went ahead and they still uh, placed all this this high percentage supply coming from over there, and they placed all their money on the pipeline, and now they got a guy that can shut it off at any time. I mean, they got the resources. The private companies have resources to look into foreseeable situations like this. So would you think they're also kind of playing dumb in a way, like just to maybe get
I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you saying that
well
people who are controlling or energy in Russia,
well
or are
no
you talking about people in Germany?
well okay, so the people that established the pipeline from Russia to
Right.
the European nations, right? Well, I guess
Right.
one of them Germany.
Nord Stream
So
2, right?
the Nord Stream 2, right?
Yeah.
So the companies behind that, I guess, would be like they would be in the private sector.
Hmm.
So this guys, they got to do a whole evaluation as far as, okay, so we're putting in like 50% of the supply, and we don't have, another source to get it from, right? So wouldn't that be kind of negligent in a way?
Well, it was, but I mean, I think you have to blame Merkel for that.
Merkel.
Because she was warned not to put all the eggs in one basket like that. But she did, she went ahead and pushed for it anyway.
No, I guess it goes back to the political.
Yeah, it's very political. Yeah.
aspect.
Yeah. No,
And I
they
think there
wanted
was
to.
an article in the Wall Street also saying how a lot of the Congress and senators, I mean, they try to oversee the market, but they're investing in it as well. And it's some of them the same securities they're criticizing, they're putting money into it.
Well, I mean, anyone from Congress who has seen a ridiculous appreciation of their net worth since they joined Congress, you can probably bet that they've been participating in insider trading. I mean, like Nancy Pelosi is like just the most blatantly obvious example, but pretty much any of the ones that have like doubled or tripled their net worth since they went into Congress, you can bet that they've been doing something illegal. I mean, you're getting $175,000 salary, even if you have 3 million before, now you have 40 million. Come on.
They call that the Nancy Pelosi capital management.
There you go.
You just track, because they have to like they have to make it public, right? Like they have to disclose their investments, like all these
They're supposed to.
politicians. Yeah.
They're supposed to.
So some guys on Wall Street would they would just like go through those disclosures, and they would track it, and they'd set up
Paul Pelosi's been pretty obvious. I mean, he actually puts the trades in.
What I was reading though was that I don't know how much of that is her, or how much of that is like, just
no, she knows
automated
what's
by her
going on, but
team.
Paul Pelosi is the one who is the portfolio manager.
Oh. Who's Paul Pelosi? Is that
Her
her
husband?
Oh, gotcha. Interesting. I didn't know that. I got a question for you. As far as like the modern state of Wall Street, I've heard a lot of it as like, a lot of those firms, the trading firms, have moved over into New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, like, or I've been hearing that like the Wall Street area, the downtown area, is turning more into like a residential district. So I was wondering if you could like go more into that, or if you could like tell us a little bit more about the developments there, like in New York.
I think it was exacerbated by the pandemic, when everybody realized that they could do their work at home and didn't have to come into the office. And there's a certain amount of business at Wall Street that still has to be done in person. And that's why bars like Ulysses were very popular, and I believe still are. But a lot of the other work, especially like quant work and computer-based work, a lot of people are realizing they don't have to be in New York. And as a result, the firms realized that too, and they were paying a ridiculous price per square foot for office space. And they weren't getting the tax breaks that they wanted to maintain, because they were being squeezed as being the fat cats who weren't paying their fair share. They decided to go across the Hudson. And there's enough of cachet in the area because it's near Tribeca, near the South Street Seaport, all these other areas where it still has a cachet for residential real estate.
But I heard that shift was already happening before the pandemic.
Yeah, it was starting to trend that way, but I think the pandemic really pushed it, because it drove a number of people away to create more vacancies. So other people saw it and say, hey, maybe we should move here.
Oh
But also
wow.
a lot of other companies were already starting to feel the squeeze in New York.
Gotcha.
Because
Gotcha.
de Blasio was certainly not helping things. And Adams does not look like to be much better. And the increased rate of crime now in New York is even a greater disincentive now for people to want to come into the office to work in New York.
Yeah, wow. I've been seeing some of those reports in the news. So has Lower Manhattan, that area, Wall Street, is it still kind of a ghost town, or has it kind of come back since pre-pandemic levels, or like what are you seeing there on the
It's
ground?
not at pre-pandemic levels yet, because a lot of retailers had to close down that brought people who were not working on Wall Street or people who were after hours. Like Century 21 was big for a lot of female shoppers for clothing and all kinds of things. Near the Oculus, they tried to open things up, but I mean, I was there recently and it was kind of dead.
Is that like Hudson Yards?
Well, Oculus is like where they have the train station, but they built a whole structure there, basically within yards of where the trade towers was. It's close to where the World Trade Center Museum. And it was a huge structure. It was great in terms of integrating the different trains, the different train stations. But they wanted to put like a whole like super mall kind of environment in there.
Yeah.
And wonderful architecture. They are pretty high-end stores. It's the same kind that you would find on Fifth Avenue. But most of them were dead. I didn't see much activity there at all. I mean, I think the Apple store was the only one that was really occupied.
This is the Hudson Yards area, right? Is that what we're talking about? That it's like that new
Oculus,
development.
I guess I thought Hudson Yards was a little further north, but you suppose you
Oh,
could be right.
is it? I don't know. I'm not too familiar with the area, so that's why I'm asking. Oh, and
But it's right,
what's
it's right in the World Trade. It's right at near the base of the World Trade Center.
okay. Let's see. Oh,
Oh,
Hervé has a question here.
yeah, Hervé had talking about international finance. What are ways you manage risk on payments in international operations? It depends on the country.
Hedging, futures.
Can you be a little more specific?
Yeah, it's just a topic we're going over in class. Pretty much like when you get paid in a foreign currency and the fluctuations in the market, what are ways like that you have managed that risk in payment? Or I don't know, I kind of wanted to hear on that maybe if you.
Well, okay. I mean, obviously, people take like forward contracts if they feel that the currency that they might have to take payment in is volatile. Or vice versa. Like are you talking about something like when Nike wants to order sneakers from Vietnam or something, and then is there a dong dollar hedge or something like that? Are you talking about in those kind of terms or something different?
Yeah, well, similar, I guess. Like if you get paid, right? You manufacture, or like Nike paying, or like how would I say it? Pretty much like payments, like getting paid in a different currency. I don't know, like I mean, you were talking about like you were about to talk about hedging, like how would you hedge that as well? I'm kind of curious about.
Well, if the dollar is strong, then you as the factory owner in Vietnam would say, hey, I'd love to take your dollars. If you're Nike's CFO, which they say, well, hey, we got these extra dong lying around that we got from when we had this show. Why don't we pay them in their dong so we don't have to use our dollars? And then it depends on what they agree to in the contract. Now, if Nike has the flexibility to do this, then great. I actually wrote an article about the death of the petrodollar for Motley Fool. and it went into countries that had a favorable relationship with China, because China made this was 2018, 2019, I believe. China issued their first oil contracts that were denominated in yuan as opposed to US dollars. And as a result, I don't know how much of any folks know about how George Soros made his money with currency arbitrage and actually basically rigging the markets. But he's persona non grata in a number of countries in Asia, specifically in Thailand and Malaysia and South Korea, because he basically tried to destroy those nations' currencies with his arbitrage. And the way he would do it is he would put out rumors of possible default on their sovereign bonds, and Stanley Druckenmiller would go in, and when he was still working with him, and short the hell out of those currencies, the Malaysian ringgit, South Korean won, and Thai baht, and then see the rest of the market follow suit and then cash out when it bottomed out. And then as a result, during that period of time, which could be several weeks, it basically squeezed those nations' foreign currency reserves, because then all of a sudden they had to ante up a lot more money to of their money relative to the contracts, which were usually in US dollars, in order to pay for wheat, medicines, all kinds of things like that. So there was no hedge that they were able to do for that. Now, if they didn't need to use US dollars, and say they had a supply of yuan, that would have been one out for them to keep as an option to keep their economies going without having to take such a huge hit. And my article in Motley Fool basically went into that whole scenario where countries that have a supply of yuan will be doing well, and also those U.S. petroleum companies that do business in those Asian countries that have China operations or other kind of operations where they can get access to yuan may find it easier.
Okay,
So like I
gotcha.
mentioned, like Hess, as a company that had no real Asian presence, they would find it hard. No China presence, I should say, would find it harder to do business than like an ExxonMobil, for example, that has a number of joint venture agreements in China, so that they can easily get yuan if they needed to do something in Malaysia, for example, and they wanted to do stuff in yuan instead of dollars. No problem.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm going to share the article in the
Yeah, I was gonna say, where can I read it?
Oh, you want me to get the article? You want me to put the link in? Hold on.
Yeah, I like reading stuff on that. Like,
Sure.
I think it's very
Hold on. I'll dig that up.
awesome.
It's I think it's called "Some U.S. Oil Companies Are Prepared for the Petro Yuan and Some Aren't." Is that the one?
Might be.
This
Yeah,
one?
I'll put the link on
Okay.
just to make sure.
Or is that?
I have to dig it up here.
There's one even after Deutsche Bank's plunge. The other.
Oh yeah,
that
one. Oh yeah, you found them then. Okay, you found them.
Get it. Okay.
Yeah, I wrote one about like Deutsche Bank as a separate topic, but to me, Deutsche Bank is bound to fall regardless of economics, just because of their own level of criminality and illegal activities that they've engaged in and repeatedly been caught and fined about.
Oh wow. Are they still
Awesome.
around? Deutsche Bank.
I think Paula found them. Is the other Motley Fool one that I wrote.
Mm, yeah, the petro yuan.
Yeah, I'll make sure to read that. Sounds very interesting.
So
Thank you.
that was back then. So now these days it's like, I guess it's the petro ruble. That's
I wouldn't say that. I mean, to me, BRICS is going to be, I think all those nations that are members of BRICS, their currencies will be interchangeable because all of their evaluation references are going to be from a common standard of or ratio of commodities, whether it be precious metals, oil, or whatever. Which is where I think the U.S. has to go there as well. Otherwise, other countries are going to at a certain point they're going to say, "Why should I take U.S. dollars if you pay me 100 and it's going to be worth $75 2 weeks from now?"
Well, because they got to buy oil in that.
Well,
that's how they hedge. I don't know. That's the question, right? How would they hedge against that?
no, but I'm saying if you're the oil supplier and the U.S. wants to pay you in their dollars, but you think that the inflation is going to eat away the value of their dollar relative to like if you were holding Deutsche Marks or rubles or whatever.
Yeah,
unless you're going to turn around and use those dollars to buy something in the United States, why do you want to take the dollars if you're an oil supplier?
But what's the alternative though? Because the euro isn't doing well, and the
Well,
pound
you don't
isn't
want to take the
either.
euro. You're going to want to take ruble or yuan or
Yeah.
or if once these other countries that are join BRICS like Saudi Arabia and Germany, then they're going to use their own individual currencies and they're all going to conform their currency valuations to the agreed upon standard.
So I heard a rumor. I don't know if this is true. Maybe you know more about this than I do, but I heard, Gaddafi tried to implement a gold standard, and I heard that was the real reason why he got,
I believe that.
I think, yeah.
I believe that.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting. Because I know the U.S. tries really hard if you're challenging the petrodollar.
Yeah, well, as I say, the petrodollars to me is it's already dead. It's dead man walking, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh wow. So
I mean, this article I wrote in 2019 about the petro yuan, that was the first shot to the body, I think, but it's just increased since then.
Gotcha. Do you think there's a possibility of a because I know back during the 80s or the 90s there was like a Sino-Soviet split, and the US,
Can you speak up, please?
Sorry. So back in the 80s or 90s, like there was like a Sino-Soviet split, and the US tried to foster like deeper relations with China to deepen that split between China and Russia. Do you see that as a possibility in the future, or like what do you think is like the US game plan here, like as far as like
I think it's going to go, like I said before, I think it's going to be basically a split between China, the US, and the rest of the world. And the rest of the world is going to decide who they go to for what they want, but they won't be able to do both too easily.
So it's more of a Sino-American split now than a
yeah. I think Russia's going to be pretty tied to China, but European nations are going to favor, just because of geographic reasons, I think they're going to favor Russia, with like England, of course, favoring the US.
Oh wow. So you think there's going to be like a European split between the East and West, like Eastern Europe and Western Europe?
It's hard to say right now. I mean, I don't think there's going to be another Berlin Wall. I think Germany is going to be unified, but I think that Germany, until they have their own infrastructure problems resolved, and there was an article in the Wall Street Journal that actually Germany may start engaging in fracking because they do have reserves. They just haven't been tapping them.
Right. I've been hearing similar things in Japan too, because you know how they shut down all their
Mhm.
nuclear plants because of
Yeah.
Fukushima.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're firing them back up now because
Oh yeah.
yep, yeah, because I mean, what else, right? So China isn't really a big oil producer, is it?
No,
Not like
they're
Russia.
well, they're more of a consumer.
Mm,
But China has other things. China has the basically they cornered the market on rare earth materials,
right.
rare earth metals. Yeah, yeah.
Lithium. Yeah.
Oh, lithium, vanadium, palladium, bunch
Mhm.
of them.
True. I think the more important thing though is they're like the made in China 2020 or 2025 or something. Like it's like the factory of the world, pretty much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's why I was saying a lot of OEM stuff is still done in China, and I think there will be more barriers to that, which is why I think it's going to be the opportunity for those Southeast Asian conduits down the road.
Hmm. I don't know if Southeast Asia is really ready for to take over that kind of business though.
No,
It's
not take it
quite
over, but
difficult.
a lot of them are going to act as conduits the stuff will still be made in China, but
Oh,
they'll have a tag that says, "Oh, made in Kuala Lumpur," and just
yeah.
the tag was made in Kuala Lumpur.
Right, right. They'll just
Actual
slap a label
quality
on it.
made in China.
Yeah. Made in Malaysia, made in Singapore, something like that.
Exactly. Even though we all know it's made in China,
Yeah.
you know.
Or Vietnam, like during the tariffs, that was
Well,
a
no,
big
to
thing. A lot
Vietnam,
of
I
it
think
was
they'll actually be
Vietnam.
making this stuff, but
Mm.
it'll say like assembled in Jakarta. Yeah,
Yeah.
they put the tag and the cover on it, and it was assembled in Jakarta, but it was
we
actually
might see that in I heard there was something like that in Mexico too. There was a lot of Chinese steel and they brought it into Mexico, slapped like a made in Mexico sticker on it, and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's because I think some of the
Mhm.
tariffs they're with the treaty agreement, the trade agreement is favored. Like you got to assemble it through Mexico. Like if China would have imported straight to the U.S., it's a higher import tariff than if they would have they'd go to Mexico, assemble it there, and then get the NAFTA or what is it called now? USMC. Get
USMCA.
that yeah, USMCA.
To get the approval, to
And,
get the import approval, yeah.
yeah, and then ship it through Mexico and get the lower level tariff.
Yeah,
And
there's all
Mr.
kinds of
Zito,
workarounds like that. Yeah.
it's Mr. Zito. This is Ortiz again, and I was gonna ask like you over there in the Asian markets. I mean, it seemed like they went from day to night, from night to day. From doing sneakers and textile, assembling low level stuff to now semiconductors and everything. What do you attribute all such a drastic change in I guess in their development, the how they develop so fast in within themselves, and also what would you recommend to like students finishing up their undergrad or their grads going into the field? What how would you orient them to penetrate or get an opening into like maybe a financial career or a business career? I'm sorry,
There's a
there's
lot of
a
pieces to
couple parts. Yeah,
that
yeah,
question.
yeah.
Okay, the first question was, what do I attribute the rapid or the acceleration of proficiency in certain sectors, like high tech sectors and stuff like that in those nations?
Yes, sir.
That was the first
Yes,
part
sir.
of the question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it is well, I think the internet has helped tremendously in being able to get information and blueprints and everything that would normally not be available. I also think that certain nations, they have programs to try to send uh, their or elite students to educational institutions that specialize in those fields that there's an initiative to want to push, whether it be high tech or whether it be, I mean, India obviously is a good example of a country that's done quite well in that capacity. And what was the other part of the question is what would I recommend for students?
Yes, sir. Like trying to go into maybe financial management career or wealth management career, or maybe just overall penetrating
Okay, well,
the logistics sector.
For wealth management, I think there's going to be a lot of changes because a lot of the traditional vehicles, I think, will either fall into ill repute, or they will lose the cachet that they had. I believe that the U.S. Treasury bond is going to lose cachet because of the whole inflation thing, and the only thing that's going to really solve the inflation is to revalue the currency. That will end the inflation here and now, as long as the Fed doesn't pump out any more dollars. It has been talk. I think Vietnam already has done it. A couple other nations have already done it. They've issued new currencies that are in polymer as opposed to in fiber. I think the pound sterling is also going that way. I believe the U.S. dollar will go that way as well. And if the U.S. dollar does that with the new currency, it does a couple of other things to help bolster the strength of the dollar. Meaning, one, it will eradicate all of the counterfeit super bills. I don't know if you're familiar with this. There's a counterfeit $100 bill that was made in North Korea, another one made in Iran, and there's probably as much as 500 billion of those in circulation right now. It's by some estimates by people in Treasury Department. So a new currency made of polymer will make all of those counterfeit super bills obsolete. That will help. Other thing it will do, it will make it much more difficult for drug smuggling, human trafficking, and arms smuggling done in U.S. dollar cash, because they won't be able to get access to those to the new currency if it's made out of a polymer as opposed to fiber. And also for them to have to try to exchange it is going to be very difficult, because there will be controls. If they do anything more than $10,000, probably it's the same thing as if we do gifts or we do anything to a bank here. It creates a red flag, and they're going to have to explain where they got.
You're looking at a future that's gonna have a digital currency.
Well, it's going to be a digital currency. I think there will, but I'm saying that there will be still a cash currency. I think there's still a need for that, and I think pretty much every nation in the world acknowledges that. But they're going to make the cash out of a different material so that it's very easily identifiable versus the old currency. So anybody who's sitting on illegal batches of the old currency is going to have to explain the provenance of how they got it.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you very much. Interesting.
I'm
sure there's ways, right?
It's going to be hard. I mean, you're going to have to prove, you're going to have to prove where you got it from. I mean, yeah. Oh, my grandfather stuffed, $50 million in a mattress back in the day.
You got a cash business, man.
Yeah. Oh, when did he die? Oh, he died in 2003. How come you have bills from 2018 here?
Exactly. Oh my goodness. All right, John. It's already 3:30. This has been a really great, enlightening this has been a really great, enlightening Q&A session. Is there anything else that you'd like?
If there's anything, I've got like about 5-10 more minutes that I can stay.
Okay. All right.
If anybody has any other questions. I apologize again for joining late.
No problem. Does anyone else have any questions, guys? I have a question.
Sure.
I have, yes. Just going back to New York, going back to NYC.
Sorry?
Going back to New York, going back
Yes.
to like Manhattan and stuff. How's the Chinatown there in Manhattan doing? Because I've heard it's like it's changing. I've heard it's evolving, and I've heard like there's a lot of the properties being bought up because it's
This is
very
true.
prime.
It's
Yeah.
true. It's very gentrified. It's getting
Mhm.
much more gentrified. There's a lot more non-Chinese people moving into the area. I mean, there's a Mexican restaurant on Doyer Street in Chinatown now.
Oh wow.
I mean, this is Mexican. I mean, there's Korean and Japanese restaurants. There's even an Indonesian restaurant.
Mhm.
But it's changing. It's some of it's revived. There has been some revival of business, but a lot of mom and pop businesses that were around for several generations have had to close, unfortunately.
Pandemic.
I think that the Chinatowns in Flushing and in Queens and in Sunset Park in Brooklyn are probably getting the most growth, more so than Manhattan's Chinatown
Mhm. So
right
you
now.
feel like it's shrinking.
Manhattan's Chinatown is kind of shrinking. Well, I mean, it's still there physically, but the nature of the community and the demographics of the kind of people are changing. There's a lot more non-Chinese yuppies moving into the area now because the real estate is still relatively affordable.
It's
But
very
of course,
prime real estate.
they're as a result, they're changing the nature of even like say the grocery store, the food stores. Now I mean, it used to be very hard to find varieties of milk in Chinatown because dairy is not big in Chinese diets. But now you find cheese and variety of different milk brands, cold cuts, which you never would find in the past, but now they're ubiquitous because of the demographics of the clientele in the local areas.
Oh wow. I'm sure back in the day there was a lot of soy milk.
No,
Soy milk and no, not
not
even
much.
really.
It wasn't that popular then. I mean, that soy milk, soy milk is like a yuppie thing because they didn't want for lactose intolerant people.
No, I mean it's soy milk is popular with Asians, right?
It's popular Asian because a lot of Asians are lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
But
I-
I mean, I'm 60, so I mean, growing up in the 60s and 70s, soy milk was not a thing. It only became more popular like later on.
Oh wow, I didn't. Yeah, I mean I grew up on soy milk, so that was like that. It was good. I liked it. But now they have like the almond milk and all the other.
Oh yeah, they have all kinds of
yup-
alternatives. Yeah.
Yeah, the yuppie milks I call them. Yeah, it's very interesting. Huh.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is not anybody else? Who else? Marie or Shirley or either? Do you have any questions?
I don't have any more questions, but if I do happen to have a question or just want to reach out to you, is there any way that I could?
Yeah.
Email.
Paul. Yeah, I'll type.
Sure,
I'll
sure.
type my
Okay.
company.
Thank you.
email.
Email in the chat or
Yeah, you can email me there.
nice.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for answering my questions. Very
Oh, my pleasure. I mean, again,
Yeah.
it's just my opinion. Don't take it for gospel or anything like that.
okay.
Research whatever you can to verify whether what I said sounds plausible and whether it's something that you want to hang your hat on any decisions that you decide to make. But don't just take me at face value.
All right. Sounds good.
For sure.
Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for this was enjoyable and hopefully it was helpful.
Thank you so much, John. Really, really appreciate you doing this for us.
Oh, Paul said,
Yeah.
you know, I'm glad I could help. And you've been a friend for a while, so
For sure.
you know.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Take care
Okay.
then.
See
All
you.
right,
Thank
John.
you, sir.
Thank you so much. You have a good
Okay.
day.
Take care. You too.
All right. You too.